So, you've been playing Logan for about 13 years, approximately,
Yeah.
6 movies or so. How, as an actor, do you keep the character consistently fresh?
It really has to come from script, and the source material for this script is from my favorite of the comic book series, the Samurai Story, the Japanese saga, and that's one I've been wanting to make for 13 years. I actually first read it when I was in the trailer making X-Men 1. Brian Singer didn't want anyone reading comic books. He was afraid we'd come with a big sort of two-dimensional performance or something. And so people were it was like contraband, people handing him around. And so I read this and I said, this is the movie. So in a way, my enthusiasm for this was massive. My desire to make a movie that was really central to the character that had been set up in the comic book. For what I saw, that darker, more interior, the berserker rage, all these things that made him unique and flawed and interesting and layered were here. So it wasn't so much about being fresh, this was about being just so excited to finally dig my teeth into the character.
I mean, as a film, it's very different than the X-Men movies or even the last Wolverine film, but for you, what do you think the crucial differences are? I mean, the main difference.
It starts with the title. I mean, the fact that we call it the Wolverine, as opposed to Wolverine 2 or X-Men something something Wolverine, this is a more intimate interior character study. Yes, it has big action. Yes, it's fun and cool, but you really get to understand who he is. And tonally, I think we're a little darker and not afraid to let the movie sit for a while, not just be sort of wall-to-wall action, but have a chance to really sort of explore who he is.
And because it was so personal for you, do you have do you feel the need to put some added input into, I don't know, the script, or just, because you are Wolverine, so
Right.
It's got to be kind of precious to you.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things was having James Mangold, the director, because one thing I know about myself is everybody, I don't care how many times you played a part or how well you know it, having someone who really knows you and knows the character and knows how to get the best out of you there, like Jim does with me, he did not leave me alone. Trust me, there was no oh, you do your thing, man, I'll worry about everything else. He was on me every day. And I think he got the best performance out of me that I've had playing this part. And that, that's important. And I think I learn new things about him every day. That's why the character's been around for 50 years as a comic book character, and why for 13 years he's been around in film. I think he's just one of the more interesting.
And I know it's tough to look ahead, but what do you think is next for Logan? I mean, you're in the next X-Men, I know, but beyond that, are you interested in continuing the character?
Yeah. Right now I'm having more fun playing him than ever. And I wasn't sure, how I would feel, in doing these 2 films, but I'm absolutely loving it. And I'm finding the characters and the scripts and the stories interesting. And as long as I feel I have something more to offer, I feel it has to continue to grow and develop. As long as it does that, I'm in. Of course, there's way bigger powers of force here, including the people who will hire me and the fans. So we'll see how they react.
Everybody see the Wolverine on July 26th. What's so cool about your career is how varied it is, but I don't think, it's probably safe to say you haven't tackled anything this big before, at least in terms of anticipation. Do you approach it in a different way than your other films?
You learn with each film. The previous movie, Night and Day, with Tom Cruise and Cameron Diaz, was a large film, and you learn things on each film about, as the scale increases and the size of your crew. I mean, all you have to do is take a look at the end credits of the Wolverine and have a sense of, my God, that's a lot of people. You learn how to manage your time, and you learn how to make sure. I think the biggest thing to master with films of scale, that I don't think I would have been ready to do in my first couple films, would be, how do you carry your own personal ideas and not let them get kind of run over by the kind of military-industrial complex that is a gigantic movie. Because there's a kind of gravitational pull once one of these films engages that's pretty intense. And the way you do it is not unlike, it's not unlike politics. You kind of need a manifesto. You need almost a kind of to repeat to everyone and evangelize a production philosophy that everyone can follow.
Can you talk a little bit about the collaboration with Hugh? Because obviously he's been playing the character for about 13 years, and I'm sure he's got several of his own ideas that he brings to the table.
Oh, of course. Well, the truth is that actors aren't puppets. So the fact is that I'm never about the business of trying to get them to do, if they would just do what I want them to do. I cast them for a reason. And also, though, you know, I've worked with a lot of great actors, Hugh among them, in my life, and what I do, if anything, is steer. It's not like I'm trying to reinvent. They're there for a reason. I don't want them to be radically different. I can just steer, and I'm always thinking they're inside the body and life and soul of their character. I'm always thinking about how it fits into the big picture of the movie, and so that's kind of the role we play for each other. I also have the good fortune of having made a film with Hugh Jackman before, so that we already kind of when we fell on first day of this movie, we were already kind of in step with one another.
Obviously, there was another iteration of this before you came on board. Did any of that remain in this version that we see? And what were some of the challenges particular to that, coming on to something that was, you know, maybe already emotional a little bit?
It really wasn't. I think that there was a script that was written even before Darren came on the movie. And then when Darren came on, I think that lasted only maybe 3 months before it evaporated. So they really they hadn't made a budget or planned how they were going to do anything, and made some modest revisions to the existing script. But more so when I came on was the feeling that I thought, I wanted to make sure the movie was about something that I really understood and could put my finger on. And somehow, for me, the issue that I wanted somehow to explore in the movie that wasn't in there at that point was this whole issue of his mortality and immortality. And what's it like to love and live and lose almost everyone you've ever known or cared about, and to have to go on ad infinitum. What does that feel like? A lot of great films and stories as diverse as Wim Wenders' Wings of Desire or Isaac Asimov's story, The Bicentennial Man. I've always been interested in this idea of the hero or the god who somehow is immortal and is cursed with the never-ending life instead of blessed with it. And in the unique circumstance of Logan, he can't even get a way out, because if he tried to hurt himself, he'd heal.
Right, exactly. And that's what's kind of unique about this. It's not typical superhero movie at all. It's sort of, it feels like a Western, feels like a samurai film, a noir. Were there any particular inspirations, either film or just something in general that you
Outlaw
applied to?
Josie Wales was a big one. Many of the Kurosawa samurai films were often I thought about making the film. Westerns and samurai films are literally the same thing, with just swords and guns replacing one another. But for me, it was very much the opportunity to I think of those as superhero movies too. I think that the way you're defining superhero movie is almost this kind of modern affectation in which it kind of becomes about saving the earth always.
Yeah, right.
And I'm not so sure, when I read comics, they weren't always about saving the earth. So they were actually more like Westerns and samurai films, blood feuds, revenge sagas, love, revenge, kind of hatreds dating back into the past. There was a lot of other stuff present in those kind of comic books than I see. I think we've almost, in the effort to be tentpole films, I think there's been this effort to raise the stakes to the point where the stakes could never be higher. And I do find sometimes it's a cheat. You know, it's instead of getting the audience to care about the characters, you get the audience to worry about their own survival, because if the hero doesn't stop whatever's going on, then we'll be dead.
Explodes.
Yeah, so it seems to me like kind of an odd cheat. What we set out to do was to make a movie where you're not at risk. The characters you care about on the screen are at risk, and do you stay invested anyway?
So it's been about 7 years or so, hard to believe, since you last played Jean Grey. What was it like reprising the role after all these years?
Quite unexpected. I really did not think that there was going to be a phone call to say that we want you to come back in the Wolverine, especially. You know, I've died twice in the series, so it was a really fun, pleasant surprise, and especially the way they brought me back in this film. There's something different and tender and beautiful about the moments between these two characters, and so I was thrilled.
You sort of act as Logan's conscience in a way in this. So when you're playing Jean, do you play it the way you did in the other films, or are you almost playing it the way you think Logan would envision her?
You know, I think that there's a lot left to the imagination when it comes to this character in this movie, the scenes between the two of them. and what your interpretation of it is. So the ambiguity I really liked about it, and I wanted to make sure that people could, that they weren't left with this is what it is and what you're supposed to think. You know, I mean, there's even a hint of Phoenix in that for a second. So, you know, who knows what it is.
Is it easy to kind of fall back into the rapport with Hugh?
Very, yeah. I mean, he makes it so easy. He's so great. And it was, I forgot that that many years had passed until somebody told me today that, you know, it's been 7 years or something since we worked together. He just makes you forget these things. And, you know, we've worked together on 4 movies now, so it's, I didn't have to think back about, what was that character again, and how am I supposed to play her? It just all automatically, the moment we were together in bed, it fell into place.
Do you have your own ideas about, you know, of course it's all there in the script, but since you've played the character so many times, do you have your own sort of notions about, you know, what she should say, or is that just all right there on the page for you?
Oh, I have plenty of ideas. Nobody wants to listen to them. You know, the problem. No, the thing is, like, I really respect the writer and director's work, and I wouldn't, unless I really truly believe that there's something that could just make it a little bit better. But I'm not one of those actors who starts rewriting or directing things or whatever. I don't. You know, I want to do that on my own in my own films, but I respect people too much to do that. So I always believe that you make the best in life in general. You do the best with what you're given, and then you try to get beyond that and make it, you know, elevate it, make it better. What
do you think is next for Jean Grey? Is this it, or are we going to see her again?
I don't know. It's a good question. I mean, she is the Phoenix. I mean, she does resurrect. So I hope that we get to see more of her in whatever capacity that may be.
Oh, we know there's another X-Men movie coming out.
Right, but I would know that I was part of that or not. So that, no. But I don't know. Hopefully one day somebody has any ideas, you know, bring it on, I'm game.
So I'm curious for all of you what your experience or knowledge of the Wolverine character has been up until this point. Were you familiar with the books or just the movie character?
I watched a whole like X-Men series, and I was familiar with cinema, but I never read the comic until I got involved this project.
Yeah, me too. I watched the whole of the series, and also when I heard the announcement of the making film location in Japan, and then I bought the comics a few years ago, and then I read the comic, and so I'm so excited and then happy to be a part of this movie.
I was familiar with all the X-Men series movie, but not the comic books either. But yeah, I didn't even know there was a Japanese story. Mm-hmm. But I heard he always wanted to make a movie of this story particularly, and we really thank him to, you know, make it come true.
Is there sort of like an added pressure when you're in a movie like this that you know, a billion people are gonna see? I mean, is that like intimidating?
Yeah, of course we have a big pressure, but that kind of things, getting up our motivation. So it was my energy.
How about you? Because I know your film background isn't very large, so you're going, this is movie, you're going to be on the map now, right?
Every day was like learning and learning experience, a lot of challenging, especially action stunt, but all crew and cast and they helping me out a lot, and Hugh and James Mangold helped me a lot, and so I'm now I watched the film with Tao was there. I watched the film with Tao the other day, and now I feel like okay, I actually joined a really big
realized.
Yeah, I realized. I actually didn't I thought I saw my name the very end of the film. I'm like, Oh, yeah, yes. Okay, say Wolverine. Yes, I was in the
Right.
Not a dream.
Yeah, that's so cool. And now you're talking about the action sequences. I mean, they look pretty elaborate. Does that take a long time to choreograph all of that stuff?
Yeah, we spent 3 weeks for the rehearsal and choreographing and training. But on the set, we spent just 4 to 5 days for our fighting scene. And then fighting between Hugh, it was just 3 days. So it was so smooth and totally no accident.
Pain-free.
Yeah.
And you all of your characters have this a very long and detailed backstory. When you're making the film, do you come together to sort of fill in the gaps, or talk to the director about your histories and stuff?
We did a lot of readings before we started shooting, all together or sometimes in a group.
Yeah.
So we had a time to talk about our characters, what the background is, what's the relationship between each other, and that really helped, I think.
If you're along for further adventures with Wolverine, do you have any ideas, like what you would like your character to go through in the next one?
I think that's her new step actually, because she was married whole life, So she, for first time, she decided to travel by herself. I mean, well, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.